Welcome to the Grow Fast podcast, where we talk with leading sales, marketing, and personal growth experts about how companies can accelerate sales, optimize marketing, and grow their businesses fast. Let's go. Hi, Melina. How are you?
Hi, I'm doing well.
Awesome. I mean, this is funny because you have this amazing kind of light show going on behind you, and I have the most low-tech setup possible because I'm in a hotel room at Tech Week. Where are you located?
It's nice. Long Beach, California.
Oh, nice.
Where it's always sunny.
Sunny and 70 degrees. Hey.
Yeah.
Hey,
I was in San Francisco a little bit. It's great weather up there too.
It is. You have any food recommendations for San Francisco?
Yes. Well, so many things. Ghirardelli Square.
Okay.
Got to check that out. There's a lot of good fusion food. There's like a food cart park area where you can go and like get things really quick, fast. If you like sourdough, I forget the name. There's like sourdough bakers up there. And then there's this place called Goat Hill Pizza, and they have sourdough crust pizza.
Ooh, you had me at pizza, but now it's sourdough crust pizza. I'm
good.
We're going to do this podcast, and I'm just going to go straight there.
Yes.
And I hope they're not closed today, right?
Good point.
Hey, I'm really looking forward to this conversation because you are a real deep subject matter expert on proposal writing and best practices related to putting together proposals. And of course, Breeze Docs, we help companies, with the platform to submit RFPs, security questionnaires, etc. Let me just take a step back, though.
Yes.
Maybe you can just talk a little bit about your experience. How did you get into proposal writing, and in some of the like high level points of things that you've done in this space?
Sure. Let's see. I feel like it all kind of started with my dad was a federal contractor, so I started working with him like after my work. I would go in and like help do certified payroll, and then I think the idea was I was going to do like accounting, but not for me. And I got put onto proposals, and I was like, wow, this is really fun. There's deadlines are super fast, always under stress, always talking to a lot of different people. The subject matter is never the same. And I just thought it was so interesting and a lot of fun, and it could keep me engaged. And in a way, a little bit different than like project management because you're always changing. There's always something new going on. And I thought it was really fun. So working with him, I was doing at the start, like proposal coordination, just kind of helping put pieces together. And then I got a little bit more into kind of assistant project management, working with our construction project managers. And then I started actually writing more and more. And I was working there like 7 years. So then after I left, I started working with my own clients doing like state and local type of bidding, and then just helping them enter the market, doing like more business development and capture. And the first half was maybe like 7 years. And then me helping other people in a variety of industries has been maybe like another 7. And that's been a range of psychiatry, disease research, epidemiology, catering, higher education services, just anything you could think of. And I just think it's super fun. And I feel like the biggest factor of success there anywhere is just understanding the landscape. So
let's talk about that. I love you what you're saying, because for a lot of companies and a lot of people, RFPs and proposals, the putting together proposals is very challenging, and very rarely does anybody say that they're quote unquote fun. Okay, in most cases, it's kind of like a necessary evil. In fact, one of the biggest things is like, should we pursue this RFP or not? The whole go no go thing, and a lot of people it's like, but it's going to be a hassle, and we don't know if we're going to win. But I love this attitude that it's fun. The other thing that I love about your answer is you highlighted something that we've found is that RFPs and proposals go across all industries. So, we were doing research for Breeze, the market research, before we decided to develop the platform. We were going to a lot of the state and county RFP portals. And, of course, you see things like construction management or IT services, et cetera. But we found one in the state of California for rodent disposal. So, you wouldn't think that the state would put an RFP out for some service like that, But what that means is if you are selling those services, you do need to be able to put together a decent proposal if you want to be competitive, right?
Right. Yeah, I've seen some. I went to like a small business award ceremony, and there was somebody there. He sold bugs. Like that was his thing. That was his whole business, selling bugs for like lizards or something. I don't know, but like you can do anything. There's RFPs for everybody to any industry.
So let's start at the beginning of the process, which would be, where are the best places to look for RFPs? And I mean, if you're in that pure business, development mode, where should you go?
This is my favorite. I am thinking of doing sort of a talk about this because I think it's very important to put into a frame of reference who the government buyers are. So there's like Fed and SLED, like the federal government, state governments, local, like city, counties, and other like quasi-government things. So I think that's the number one question you should ask yourself. Like if it's federal, SAM, that's a very easy platform that aggregates a bunch of different federal agencies. But if you're doing things like smaller, it may make sense to just talk to somebody at PTAC in your state, or maybe do a little bit of market research to find out like where there are opportunities, a large swath of opportunities, I suppose. But to say that more simply, I think the easiest place to start is maybe just going to PTAC and asking them to sign up for bid matching, because it's like, it's free. I'm not pitching them, I'm not related to them, but they've always provided a really good service, I think, to the community. And they can just give you bids for free that show you what's available to you. So I think that's an easy way. Or you can sign up for all kinds of different platforms. But I think first thing to consider is who you want to work with. If you want more money, but more complicated, federal. You want something a little bit easier to break into, maybe like state or local.
When you say more complicated, how so? Just the accreditation or approval process to become a certified vendor?
All of the above. I think working with the federal government, I have observed that the more money any sort of entity has, the more complicated it is to do business with them, because they do it so often that they have like been through all sorts of risks and problems that they've had to solve. So I think that's one of the reasons why it's so complicated to do business with the federal government. They've already been down several different roads of hiring people to do all sorts of things, and to the greatest extent possible, they're trying to manage risk. So it gets more complicated, but I think it's worth it if you can figure out how the process works. But it's very, very much a pretty significant time investment, though. So also something to consider.
Okay, so imagine I'm a small, medium-sized business, and I go to the state, local, RFP portals, and I find something that, you know what, hey, I think this is something that we could have a chance of being competitive at. Then what are the next steps? In fact, what's your advice in terms of like the whole go no decision? Like, do you have a heuristic or a process that you follow?
That's so good. I have kind of somewhat of a framework. I think Shipley's a good industry standard. They do have like this 96 point. I don't even know. It's so many. It like goes through literally every single detail you could do, but it's more of like a rough guideline. But generally, you can just think of a standard sales funnel. Like we're looking for leads, we're somewhat qualifying them, kind of moving them to the point of purchasing something. So when you're looking at an RFP, I think you may consider like, where are you going to put that? Do you want other people to look at it? Like what kind of things would make it absolutely no? Because those questions get a lot more granular as you kind of move something along. So I think it makes sense to do at least one or two kind of passes of reading through the documents to see if it's a good fit. So let's say like a first example for a first go at it would be, do we have enough time to do it? Is it related to our skills? Can we do it by ourselves? That could be like, okay, initial questions. Then second questions could be, do we have the equipment or do we have the team? Is there some weird insurance requirement here? Do we need a bond? Do we need, I don't know, can we do it in X amount of time? Partners.
No, and then that's where the complexity comes in, because a lot of times, again, at SMB or even enterprise, you have one person who receives the RFP or finds the RFP. There might be some hard requirements built in there, but they might not know, because it's very hard for one person to know the capacities throughout the company. Like, okay, do we have this insurance? Can our product do this? Can we deliver, on their time requirements, et cetera? So then you have to start to reach out to other people, other stakeholders or subject matter experts in the organization. And that can be a challenging process, because a lot of people, they're like, I'm busy with my regular job and you're bothering me with these questions.
You're taking
and I
my time.
These questions. Yeah, exactly. So how do you do that in a tactful, diplomatic manner?
Building alliances. I think if you can, just try to make friends with everybody, or just get on everybody's good side. But I think one difficult thing about the proposal process is you want to just put a proposal writer in there and say, okay, here you go, have at it. But it's very much a team sport. Like, you really need a lot of people.
Make magic happen. And you're like,
like, I can't, I'm trying my best. And it's really like a group learning curve, because if you have subject matter experts or other experts that you need to get information from, it's often the time that maybe they don't understand the procurement process, and maybe there's like a misunderstanding about the level of detail required to get something up to par. Or maybe timelines are a really serious thing. There's no universe in which you can submit something late most of the time. So take that with a grain of salt. But if other people aren't understanding that importance, that's also a huge issue. Also, the RFP is like so much bigger than just the words on the paper. You know what I mean? It could be referencing like, oh, you have to look at these standards, or, oh, you have to look at this, our 5-year plan, or, oh, XYZ. That's all in the fine print that could easily be missed.
So maybe then your job is to kind of go through initially and say, okay, here are the must-haves or the critical points. Check with the key stakeholders if you need to, or at least alert them to say, hey, can you please review this and let us know from your point of view, get back. When you start, because you work with so many different organizations, when you initially start, do you have some kind of kickoff meeting where you either virtually or in person talk with all the stakeholders and say, hey, this is what our process is going to look like going forward, and this is my expectation from you? Or do you just reach out when an RFP comes in and say, hey, I'm Melina, and I need to take a look at this?
I think I kind of have to like play by ear. Some kind of depends on people's comfort level, or like understanding of government contracting. If there's if people haven't had the time to like familiarize themselves with requirements, which I understand why you wouldn't, that's why you're hiring me.
Right.
That's kind of a slower process to say, okay, this is how it works. I'm not trying to be mean. This is really, I can't fix the requirements. This is really what we need to do to win. Sorry. But if it's other people who maybe have bid before or do have an understanding, then I'll say, okay, well, this is our pipeline. These are the stages. This is what the questions we're asking for. Stage 1, 2, 3. We're going to meet every week to move them through. I still do that with other people who are newer, but it's just a little bit slower to like get everybody up to speed about what's going on, and I try to do like other conversations to just make it easier to understand.
Awesome. What are some best practices in terms of, you've responded to similar questions or similar RFPs in the past, and let's assume that the company doesn't have like a Breeze type platform where they're just kind of doing things manually, but there are some still ways that you can do that kind of in an efficient manner. What are some best practices that you use or that you've seen in terms of being able to leverage content that you've created in the past?
There's a couple of ways. One way is the reason why people probably hate proposals is just fishing into your old folders and trying to find like what you need.
Right.
It's awful. It's extremely time consuming, and it just adds way too much unnecessary time to your timeline. Or I've seen other people kind of like centralize answers in a place where you could just do some sort of a database, or other people who are more tech savvy. So this would be like a writer who's also a programmer could do maybe some sort of query type database where they can just give it a list of questions and they'd get back the answers. But that's like advanced. High level.
And again, I've said Breeze like 3 times. I'm not here to promote Breeze because there are several platforms out there that do things similar to what we do. But there's also just going directly to AI and saying, for example, here's a security policy, or here's our insurance policy. Can you look for this clause? Instead of you going through a 20-page document, there are ways to use AI to kind of do that work for you. Are you doing that yourself? Are you seeing that?
I think you'll find a lot of people who have been in this industry, whether they're proposal writers or not, have mixed feelings about AI. Like it's a helpful tool. I think it really depends on how you use it. Like it's a very helpful tool, but the way that I use it can be more efficient opposed to somebody who may not understand the nuance of reading a document. So if you're giving your AI tool something and saying, okay, help us find and manage risk, I would not recommend doing that. I would say maybe still find somebody who understands what's going on and have them at least run through it once. And then you can use the AI to help them save time after like a real human has looked at it and understands there's nuance. Sometimes they hallucinate. Sometimes the language isn't consistent across pages. Sometimes people are using different words to mean different things, or sometimes the person who's writing doesn't really know how to articulate what it is that they're trying to say. So you kind of have to like read into the lines, and the AI isn't always good at that. I think it could be if you're training it. So I think that might be something that Breeze can do if you're like giving it the same type of documents, you can learn about catching that type of nuance. Or
I mean, we, as part of our platform, we have an approval process, and we highly recommend that the RFP manager, tag the subject matter expert on an answer and say, can you check this? And once it's been approved by the subject matter expert, then that's quote unquote approved, and it goes to their permanent knowledge base. But before that, we're like, because it's hard when you're in that project management or the writer's role. You've got to pull information from so many different parts of the organization.
Right.
And again, you don't want to bother people. So you try to do as much as you can yourself. But if you're relying just on AI or just on what you think it is, I mean, humans can make mistakes, AI can make mistakes. So you kind of do need to loop in the subject matter expert, at least for that first iteration.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why the first ones always take so long.
Yeah. And the more you do, the better you get at it. And then you can leverage the work in the past, and then you get more competitive, and then you win more, and it's a win-win. It's that virtuous cycle, but it takes an effort in the beginning to get that flywheel going, moving forward.
Understand. Okay, so here's a metric that's generally true for me. It takes me about 8 proposals of working with any given person to increase my output by 50 to 80% faster.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's because the way that I organize the information and the way that I'm extracting the content and getting it prepared for future use. It should be the case that after a handful, you've already kind of interacted or been presented with the types of questions you're going to be answering. And so that means you should have at least a solid foundation. So now that every new time that you're answering, you're not just building up your foundation, you are now just tailoring to that person's unique need. So it's just a lot less time.
It's funny because you say that number up to 80% faster. That's actually one of the metrics that we quote on our website. Because
really,
That's
I mean, phenomenal.
It's almost exactly. So which makes me feel good because we just didn't make that number up. We did our research, but the critical thing is doing that initial work and getting that knowledge in the knowledge base. And in your case, the knowledge base is your process for reusing information. It's also up here, and so on. Let me ask you though. So you're also a writer, and so in a lot of companies you have an RFP manager, and they're not necessarily a writer. And sometimes you have an RFP writer who's not the manager, but sometimes you do both. And so we look at it from different things. But when you're talking about government RFPs, how important is the writing style compared to just give them a factual answer? Do you want to put a kind of a marketing spin on it or not?
I think you want to give people what they want from you. And sometimes they don't know what that is. So you have to kind of read into that based off of what the requirements say. But I do think it makes a lot more sense for there to be a consistent style across the board. Because if you're sending this to somebody, I know not all proposals are read in depth all the time, but you're sending to somebody who, catches their eye on something and they read for a living, they may be off-put by a lack of consistency. Or they may just remember like, if you can't do this well on the proposal, maybe that's reflective of your work quality, which I think can be kind of risky.
I totally agree with that. I did a lot of work in the marketing industry in Asia, and early on,
I saw that. Fascinating.
It's a lot of fun. I love just traveling and working, everywhere. But I had a lot of conversations with ex-Korean and Taiwanese exporters back a long time ago, where they would create these amazing products, but their ad copy was broken English. And I would say, you need to pay somebody that can do, a better job. And they're like, oh, it's not important. We have this amazing product. And I said, you're right. But the way the consumer, when these are the volume importers, would look at it is if you can't, use the appropriate language, then they probably think that your product is not very good. I mean, it's not really true logic, but it is a kind of logic. So that's like kind of what you're saying.
A heuristic. People are going to do it whether it makes sense or not. Unfortunately.
Absolutely.
Like if you see a typo on a resume.
Oh, yeah. And I've sent resumes out and then realized there was a typo, and I feel like,
no.
Take it back.
Panic.
Yeah.
I know.
But let me ask you, because you obviously enjoy language. You're very articulate, and so
thank you.
Like, how much time do you spend making the text, making it yours? This is something I'm kind of proud of, or do you say, you know what, I just got to get this done?
I feel like it's never enough time. I don't think there's ever been a proposal where I feel like I spent as much time as I wanted to do on this, unless it's a sample I make for just showing some client. But I think kind of like a balance. I think I have run the gamut. I've done coordination, management, the writing, managing subcontractors, compliance, meeting debriefs, whatever, anything, you name it. But if I'm the only person doing all of it, then quality overall of all of those items will go down. So what I try to focus on is compliance and then writing to make sure that we are giving ourselves a competitive edge or are really pointing to our strengths. I think over time you can make it nicer with graphics. I love to incorporate graphics because they're easier to read. They're easier to understand. You can get like a full picture just looking at something really quick. So over time, it's nice to add, but not just generic ones. Like you can customize them a little bit more.
Can you give me an example of a graphic that you've added?
Yeah, I was doing like data governance, and there wasn't a good one that we could find online. So it was like custom relationship between like governance, data science, data engineering, and then the input from all the different departments. And it was just something that we were making for that specific proposal to make it easier for the reader to understand. Or you can even say like a workflow kind of thing, like this process starts here with person A, then goes to B, then goes to department C or something. It's just something simple like that can make it really easy for someone to understand what you're writing about. So that it's kind of like an introduction, almost like, oh, this is what we're going to be talking about, this connection of steps. And then you read about it. So then it kind of solidifies what you're saying.
I love that from a couple different points. An image will draw people in. So it elevates their level of interest so that they can power through the text, because for some people, it's a lot of work to go through the text. So it creates that initial interest, but it hopefully tells them what they're going to be finding out in the text, and then helps reinforce it so they can remember it, right? Because, if you've seen 10 different proposals and one of them has these amazing graphics, that's going to stick in your mind. I mean, we're human beings at the end of the day, right? And so it's like those hooks are really, really important. Another hook, though, can be like interacting with the RFP issuer. And some of them are kind of strict, and they're like, hey, we're not allowed to, or that we have like a window of opportunity to ask questions. Mm-hmm. How do you have a strategy to kind of get noticed and, get on their radar?
Ideally, you would be like making connections or meeting people before you send an RFP, or like not having to send one cold. I've won cold once, but it's better, to warm people up and like build a relationship. Maybe checking some forecasts, or even just sending an email saying, hey, I plan on bidding this. Just wanted to let you know. And then once you send it, make sure they got it. Just give them a call. Hey, did you get my thing? Great. Or send them an email follow-up, and then just keep checking back in with them to make sure that, or just to ask if what the results were, and if whether you won or not. It's always a good practice, I think, to ask for a debrief, because we may not always find out like the exact details we want to know about our competitors, but at least we can kind of understand how we fare in the group overall, like technical.
Massively important. And I find that sometimes people are reluctant, or shy is probably not the right word, but they're like, oh, I might be crossing some boundary if I'm like, you know what? The only thing they can do is say no, right? So you might as well just ask. It's just business, right?
Oh, yeah. The worst thing that can happen. Yeah, that's fine. Just keep asking, or don't. Just come back the next time. Ask somebody else.
Exactly. There you go. Okay, so hey, I want to jump tracks a little bit. What do you think about like SOC 2 questionnaires and security questionnaires and things like that? Because those aren't proposals, but those are kind of a necessary thing that needs to get done.
Like the super, super long, just cells of questions that you have to answer.
Yeah, like, well, I mean, okay. A lot of people are trying to get SOC 2 compliant these days, or they have to do security questionnaires. Like almost any business, they're like, okay, before we can send you our information, you need to fill out the security questionnaire, things like that. That's not a proposal, pretty steep, but it's something that needs to get done.
It feels like it. Yeah. I think I'm helping somebody with that right now. So they're like, you do proposals, you would be good at this. And I'm like, okay, it makes sense. I'm just making sure we're doing all of the things that we're instructed to do. But I think one of the issues there is, I think we're not like clear on all of the things that we have to do. So there's like some reading learning curve. But I think I would probably go the route of using Breeze or making some other type of database to help answer those, because you don't want to be recreating the wheel every single time. So I would maybe try to put some time away with your SME or subject matter expert, maybe once a week or as much as they will let you, and then promise them you won't bother them that much after these interviews to get the content.
Help me out with this, exactly.
Yeah, well, it won't last forever.
Well, but you're actually helping them, because in a lot of organizations, it might go to the CTO or the COO. Like one of our first customers, we met at an event. The CEO was giving a presentation, and he kind of casually mentioned that he'd had a really rushed week because he spent 6 hours filling out a security questionnaire. And myself and our CRO, nobody knew what we were building, because Breeze was in the what do they call that, the stealth mode at the time. But when he said 6 hours to fill out a security questionnaire, we both looked at each other like, okay, so he's on our radar, and now they're a customer, right? So when they can outsource it to a specialist like you already, they're like, nice, okay. So, but a lot of organizations, let me ask you this. Let's go back to your business side. You go to an organization and they're like, we can't really afford a software to respond to RFPs, or an RFP writer or specialist like you. We're going to try to do it ourselves. In that kind of scenario, you do kind of have to justify or promote your services in some manner. What's the conversation you have with them?
I try to. There's this like American Express study. I don't know if you remember to have come by it. I think they did it in like 2014-ish or something. And they found that it takes government contractors somewhere roughly on like 1 to 3 years to win anything. And their investment should be expected to be around like $120,000 per year. But that was like 2010 money. So I think now it's like 160. Or even I've read other books that say 3 to 5 years. And that kind of reminds me of this quote I heard that goes something like, we didn't do this because it's easy. We're doing this because we thought it was easy. And I only tell people, about the figures to say, like, that's the only way I feel like I can get the point across, that this actually is complicated and it takes forever to do. So you can either pay me to do it and do it fast, or you can just take the whole 5 years and try to do it yourself. Bless you. It can be good if it's like a skill that you wanted to learn anyway, but you can expedite it with help from other tools.
you want to build widgets. You want to be the best widget manufacturer. It doesn't need you to be the best proposal writer, right? And that's your subject matter expertise. And it also goes back to what you were saying before, that after you do 3, 4, 5 of them, you get 80% faster ish. But then, which allows the company that you're working with to, if they want to, participate in more RFPs.
Oh, absolutely.
Win more business, right? So, you mentioned books. So where do you go to kind of, is it books, webinars, associations, to kind of make sure that your game is up to date and that you're learning any kind of new best practices, tips, etc.?
Oh, I think I follow like Shipley and APMP. I also look at like DAU resources. Is it like Defense Acquisition University? Got really awesome stuff there. So lately I've just been trying to look at what contracting officers are looking at, because if they're looking at my stuff, I want to be relatable to them. And then I just have other like general books about like writing, rhetoric, logic. Because at the end of the day, I want to make sure that what I'm saying is understood, and it's understood to be the best choice. And so I feel like just having other perspectives that maybe aren't always about writing, but it could be selling, or it could be just persuasion. Those things also help tremendously.
That's awesome. You clearly enjoy what you do. It's awesome. It's what's the word? Your enthusiasm or your excitement about what you do is infectious or contagious. I don't know what the right word is. Anyway,
fun.
Let me. When you are struggling, though, how do you work through it and stay motivated?
You know what? I think if it's me against an RFP, I don't feel struggle.
Me against an RFP.
I don't feel struggle. I just feel excited for the challenge. But I think one of the ways that if I do struggle, it's more of like a team dynamic, or maybe a misunderstanding of the amount of effort it takes to win. Or like what realistically can happen. Because let's say if you do have an RFP, and then maybe you have a questionnaire, but you don't have a software, or you don't have a database. And also people want graphics or all sorts of fun new stuff, but you kind of have to be the bad guy and say, I'm sorry, we can't actually do that. We have to focus on the content, the writing, to make sure we can win. I think that's a struggle. But I think over time, people learn like generally how much it takes to do something, which is way longer than you could ever imagine. I feel like that applies to everything in government. Like however long you think something should take, just multiply that by 5, and then you'll roughly be in the area of how long it'll actually take.
Yeah, I was involved with a government project, and we won the contract, but that was just the beginning of it, because then we had to go through and get on a couple different platforms to actually get paid somehow. And the process, it literally took 6 months. I mean, because we were so excited. We won, we got it. Yeah. And then there was just the different platforms and everything like that. But at the end of the day, it's nice because the contract was almost renewed almost on an annual basis, right? So awesome. Like you said, you do the work, and ideally down the road. Hey, Melina, I have really enjoyed this conversation. And let me ask you, if any of our listeners wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to do that? Is that LinkedIn, or do you have a website? Or
they could do LinkedIn. My website needs work right now, but it's prettypaperworknetwork.com, or you can email me at melina@ppn.email. It's just the word email, and that's it. Try to shorten it a little bit.
Awesome. And I'll put links in the show notes to your LinkedIn, your website, and I probably won't put your email, because those bad guys will go out there and they
spam. Thank you for that.
Yeah. But anyway, hey, really enjoyed the conversation. I love your backdrop. Thank you for my boring hotel room, but I am at Tech Week. That sounds kind of cool, I guess.
Super exciting.
Yeah. Very nice talking with you. Thanks so much for coming on the GrowFest podcast.
Okay. Thank you for having me.
Cheers.